get overcome by old material attachments and bad habits, or we lose our taste for chanting and associating with the devotees. So, you know, we may experience this also in our own lives. And so definitely we should not see these pastimes of the Lord just as some amazing, wonderful stories. But no, it's actually all about us, right? So that's why on festivals like Narasimha Caturdasi, I like to emphasize that point where we can take something out for our own spiritual life. You know, not just, oh, what an amazing story, but no, how is this relevant to me and my practical life? I find this is the main challenge, really, that we don't just know these pastimes and the philosophy and we like to repeat them and remember them, but that we apply things in our own life so that some transformation takes place in our own hearts. Yeah, and Lord Nrsimhadev, he is definitely the one to appeal to remove all these Hiranyakashipu-like tendencies. As Kavichandra Maharaj was saying this morning, you know, lions have very long nails. So Lord Nrsimhadev is very expert with his long, sharp nails to perform the heart surgery there. And actually we can say Lord Nrsimhadev is preparing our heart so that we can approach, eventually we can approach Radha Krishna. I have a bit of a cold, so I have to sometimes blow my nose. But don't worry, it's not COVID, it's just a cold. Yeah, so Lord Nrsimhadev, most expert, and he is preparing our heart so we can actually approach Radha Krishna. Because as long as we have all these Hiranyakashipu-like tendencies in our heart is not a favorable sitting place for Shyamasundara to take a seat there. Of course, we have Paramatma in our heart, but that's not quite enough. You know, we want also Shyamasundara, you know, taking a seat in our heart. And for that, definitely, our heart has to be prepared. So I like to see Hiranyakashipu really as the embodiment, the personification of envy and false ego. Definitely, you know, the embodiment of these qualities. And yes, let us understand. By the way, envy, false ego, they are good friends. They always like to move around together, right? Hard to say which, yeah, well, no, it's not so hard to say. Obviously, false ego is the first one. And then immediately comes envy to go along with it. And envy basically comes from wanting to enjoy. As soon as sense gratification becomes a major part in our life, then envy automatically will be there. Because basically we try to establish ourselves as supreme enjoyer, supreme knower of everything, or proprietor, controller, whatever. So, and false ego makes us believe that we are the enjoyer. you know, so that's how the two are related, relatives. Yes, so I'd like to discuss today with you a nice verse from the Bhagavatam, which gives deeper insights into envy, how envy manifests towards seniors, towards equals, towards juniors. And I like to discuss these things just so we become a bit more conscious of these things. Because so often we are just so unconscious and we don't even realize, you know, because it's so subtle. We don't realize why we say things, why we do things, what is there in a subtle way underneath it. And yeah, we very unconsciously can float through our day or even our life, not really understanding the subtleties. And Prabhupada was also saying, before becoming Krishna conscious, we first have to become conscious. Yes. And hearing is always the first step in becoming conscious. Through hearing, we wake up from our spiritual coma, our sleeping state. And yes, so let us see where our journey takes us. First of all, just a few little things to begin with. In one purport, no, not in the purport, in the word-for-word translation, in the 5th canto, it says there, Kalaha, meaning the envious, and then Prabhupada puts in brackets, almost everyone. Almost everyone. Yeah, Prabhupada has a good sense of humor, and he knows how to make these points in the humorous way. Because very often we like to think ourselves to not be envious. Everybody else is so envious, especially of me, but I am not envious. No, of course not. Right? Very often we have this mentality. So that's why Prabhupada says almost everyone, meaning there's a good chance that we belong to those envious if it's almost everyone, right? Yeah, so, and this discussion from 4th canto, it is actually very simple. Prabhupada explains it in a very simple way. But yet when we unpack it a little bit, we realize that this is actually quite deep and profound. And when we go through the verse in purport, yeah, we may realize, oh no, this sounds like me. I'm doing these things. Yes, and then we become more conscious how our envy is sitting there in our hearts. And let me also mention this. This discussion is meant to help us discover the envy in our own hearts, not in the hearts of others. Right? Because, as I was mentioning, we will talk about our relationships with seniors equals juniors, and especially when it comes to envy manifesting towards juniors, very easily the contaminated mind will tell us, oh, now I know why my authorities treat me like this. They are envious. Right? Yes. So please don't fall into that trap. Because as I'm saying, this whole discussion is meant to discover the envy in our hearts, not in other people's hearts. If we use this discussion to discover the envy in other people's hearts, what does that mean? What does it indicate? False ego? Our own envy, exactly. So let us not allow our own envy to manifest in such a gross and obvious way. So therefore, please don't go that way, right? Also, as I mentioned, envy comes about as soon as the desire is there for sense gratification. And I like to understand envy as a certain state of heart. It's a certain consciousness, a certain state of heart, which comes out in all relationships, actually. Not only in relationships with somebody who has something which we don't have. As a rule, we use that word envy like that. If we are envious of somebody who has something which we don't have, so therefore we are envious. But no, as we will discover, this envious mentality comes out towards all relationships, even towards subordinates. It can even come out towards children. Not that they have something which we don't have, no, but we ventilate this frustration and envy and anger also towards children. Oh yes, thank you. I was wondering if there is somewhere a little table. Thank you. Yeah, so good to kind of become more conscious of all these things, how this envy manifests, you know, even towards people who are subordinate or equals and. Yes, so we are going to discuss verse 4, 8, 34. So it's 4th canto, chapter 8, verse 34. This is the chapter of Dhruva Maharaj leaves home for the forest. So that's a whole separate discussion and story which we don't have the time now to go into. I will just quickly chant the Sanskrit for the sake of completion. Gunadikan mudam lipset anukosham gunadamat maitim samanad anvichen nataper abhibhuyate. So, and the translation is, every man, and here man is meant as human, not the gender. Every man should act like this. And yes, please listen carefully, because we want to, in a little bit of an interactive way, we want to collect all the elements of envious and non-envious mentality towards seniors equals juniors. All right, so please listen nicely so you can help to collect all the elements. So, every man should act like this. When he meets a person more qualified than himself, he should be very pleased. When he meets someone less qualified than himself, he should be compassionate towards him. And when he meets someone equal to himself, he should make friendship with him. In this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. So that's already an interesting and powerful statement, that if we just learn how to act in a non-envious way, we will never be affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? Yes. So let us hear the purport. Generally, when we find someone more qualified than ourselves, we become envious of him. So Prabhupada uses the word like that here. When we find someone less qualified, we deride him. And when we find someone equal, we become very proud of our activities. These are the causes of all material tribulation. So here we have it again, that this envious behavior is the root cause of all miseries. The great sage Narada therefore advised that a devotee should act perfectly. Instead of being envious of a more qualified man, one should be jolly to receive him. Instead of being oppressive to a less qualified man, one should be compassionate towards him, just to raise him to the proper standard. And when one meets an equal, instead of being proud of one's own activities before him, one should treat him as a friend. One should always also have compassion for the people in general who are suffering due to forgetfulness of Krishna. And often the last sentence in Prabhupada's purports, one more time, hit the nail on the head. So, these important functions will make one happy within this material world. So one more time, it comes that if we learn to act in a non-envious way, we can be happy, even in this material world. Just say, don't we always say, there's no happiness in this material world? Well, if we can be non-envious, then we can be happy. And in one sense we can say, maybe then we will not even be a part of this material world if we are non-envious. Because Prabhupada explains how in the spiritual world there is no desire for sense gratification, absolutely none. And therefore there's also no envy in the spiritual world. And a person who is already non-envious and fully absorbed in serving the Lord in different ways, he is or she, in one sense, already in the spiritual world. Right? Yes. There's also another nice purport where Prabhupada says, actually there is no material world. There's only forgetfulness of Krishna. And from those persons who are in forgetfulness of Krishna, from them it is to be said that they live in the material world. Very nicely put, So from those persons who are in forgetfulness of Krishna, one can say they live in the material world. Because that's the wonderful feature of Krishna consciousness, that the process and the goal are exactly the same. So whatever we do here, we will also do in the spiritual world, in its perfection. So here we glorify the Lord, we discuss His pastimes, we serve Him in so many different ways, bathing Him, dressing Him, feeding Him, and making arrangements with flowers, and. So same thing is going on in the spiritual world as well. So depending on our consciousness, how much we are absorbing ourselves in these activities, we can already now and here in Simhachalam or wherever it may be, even in a big city, we can already experience some little glimpse of that joy which is awaiting us in the spiritual world. So that's a very unique feature actually of Krishna consciousness. And many other spiritual processes, the practitioner performs a certain practice in order to reach a different goal. But in Krishna consciousness, it's the same. So that is quite special. And that allows us to already, in the beginning stage, taste some little drop of this deep satisfaction and joy, which is available in the spiritual world, of course, in a much larger extent, ever increasing, unlimited. That's another beautiful feature of Krishna consciousness. It's unlimited, ever increasing. We can never say, so now we are at the stage where we understand everything and that's it. No, ever increasing. Yes. So let us have a look at these different points which are briefly mentioned in the verse in purport. Let us begin with the envious behavior towards seniors. How does the envious behavior towards seniors manifest? We may remember the non-envious behavior. What did Prabhupada say when we are non-envious? How do we receive a senior person? We are pleased. We are jolly to receive him. So, in other words, the envious behavior would be that we are not so pleased, not so jolly to receive him, right? So we may say, oh, nice to see you, Prabhu. How long are you staying? 3 days? Oh, okay, good. You know, and deep down in our heart we may think, okay, thank God, then he's leaving again. And I have the senior to myself, you know, like that. So we are not so jolly and pleased to receive. Yeah, we will take a few examples of everyday life in an ISKCON temple just to make it more tangible to us. So what else do we do with a senior person who we are envious? We do much more than not being jolly and pleased to receive him. What else do we do? We criticize, yes. Oh, we are pretty good at that. You know, we are finding faults. We are criticizing. You know, talking behind his back, and. So why do we do this? Because we try to diminish his importance, right? Yes, we try to reduce his importance, diminish his importance, and actually indirectly we want to establish our supreme position by reducing him. These things sometimes go on really undetected. Let us imagine a traveling preacher visits our temple and gives a class, and one of our friends says to us, oh, that was a nice class, wasn't it? And then we say, yes, but actually it was not so shastric. He didn't quote so many verses. Right? Or with the kirtan, was a nice kirtan, wasn't it? Yeah, it was all right, but I didn't like the tune so much. Or his mridanga playing was not that expert, you know, he has to practice a bit more, obviously. Or we find something to reduce his importance, right? And the interesting thing is that even if it is true that he didn't quote so many verses, or his mridanga playing was not so good, or whatever, even if it is true, just the fact that we feel this urgency to make the statement actually reflects envy. If we are really honest and we look in our hearts, just the fact that we feel this urge to say this shows envy. It's very subtle, and very easily we can, you know, cover it up by saying, well, it's true. Can't I say what's true? You know, just in the name of exchanging with my friend. No, what's wrong with speaking the truth? Freedom of speech? What's happening? You know? But no, just the fact that we like to make the statement and point it out actually shows envy. Yes. Also, our previous Acharya, Sridhar Swami, he was also saying, whether it is true or not, talking about the faults of a Vaishnava means blaspheming. Yes. Ooh, that's important to understand, you know? Because often we think just the fact that this is true, that the person has this fault, gives me the right to talk about it. But no, it means we are blaspheming devotees. And that is the first offense to chanting the holy name. So no wonder, you know, we are not making that rapid advancement, because we are committing these offenses all the time and we don't even realize. Yes. Yeah, so I find this very important to understand, that even if it is all true, still, we should not talk about the bad qualities or the shortcomings of a devotee. There's envy behind it, you know. What else do we do if we are envious of a senior person? There's one more thing which is often done. We are challenging their authority, yes, definitely. We may ask very provocative and challenging questions or something, not being in the humble mood of inquiry, but in a challenging mood. What else? Yes? Ignore, very true. We completely ignore his presence. We pretend he's nobody and nothing, not worth giving any attention to. Right? Don't we also do that sometimes? We just pretend he's nobody. You know? Yes. Actually, in the Manu Samhita it says that if we meet a devotee and we are not pleased to meet him, that is already Vaishnava Parad. So I'm sure we all have people in our lives where we are not so pleased to meet them, right? Yes, where we see, oh no, not this person, I better go that way. I don't want to talk to this person now, or something. So, this already indicates that there is something not quite right in our hearts there, you know? Yes. Yes, these are basically the main aspects. So let's go over to the non-envious way. We said already one thing, that we are jolly and pleased to receive him. What else do we do when we are non-envious towards a senior? We serve, yes. And we serve humbly. What humble? I only heard humble. Yes, we have a humble attitude, pay obeisances. What else do we do?
We want to be around him, associate, praise him.
Yes, and the main important thing, how do we associate with seniors? Yes, inquire, hear from the person. Yes. We have the verse Tadvidi Panipatina, Pariprashnena Sevaya. Pariprashna, inquiring, Sevaya, serving. So that is not only towards Guru like this, but actually towards any more experienced devotee. That's how we take advantage of the presence of a more experienced devotee, that we inquire from that person. You know, that's how we squeeze some nectar and wisdom out of the person. And these two elements of inquiry and service, they actually enhance each other. So the more we humbly serve, that puts us in the right frame of mind to hear in a humble mood. And then the more we hear, the more we feel inspired to serve. And the more we serve, we feel inspired to more inquire. So they enhance each other, the hearing and inquiring and the humble service, you know. Yeah, very important aspect. Actually, there is purports where Prabhupada says this inquisitiveness is one of the main important aspects of a devotee, that he is inquisitive. You know, he wants to find out and hear attentively and inquire, how can I overcome the obstacles in life and so on. And you may also have observed that these days people, they love to talk about themselves rather than inquiring, right? Yes, people like to talk about themselves, what they all have been doing, and to do this in the presence of a senior person is actually considered a little inadequate, you know, unless that senior person asks us, so what are you doing, what service are you doing, and then we can share. But just talking about ourselves, easily it reflects some way of boasting and showing off and being proud of our achievements or something. So yeah, not the right way to definitely not do this in association with a senior person. Yeah, so let us move on to envious behavior towards juniors. So how does that manifest? Envious behavior towards juniors. We deride them. Yes. Yes, we try to overpower them. We are condescending, we say in English. We talk down to them, you know, and somehow have a more or less subtle mood of being oppressive, you know, wanting them to, yeah, be down, simply to establish our superior position. I mean, we are already superior, but just to make it firm, you know, that's why we, one more time, somehow push that person down, just to demonstrate and in a perverted way enjoy our superiority, right? And yeah, we may be having this mood, yes, I do want to uplift you, but definitely not higher than I am, right? I am your well-wishing friend, but you are down there, I'm up here. Yes, yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, this is all going on. You know, we may even feel threatened, you know, if a person comes up and actually becomes more capable than we are, you know, yes. And we may want to keep them down, you know, yes. Yeah, so to actually really uplift a person and make them more glorious and successful than what I am, for that we really have to be non-envious, you know? Yes. Otherwise we will just not want to see another person more glorious and successful than I am, you know? And interesting, I have also observed this. I'm the kind of person that I'm always analyzing and observing, and I like to get to the roots of things. And sometimes we can observe that we are not so good in delegating services to others, because good delegation means that we follow up. We ask the person, so how are you doing? Do you need anything? Do you need money? Do you need helpers? You know, do you need anything? So good delegation means we follow up. And behind it has to be that mood that we really want that person successful. But very often we can observe that we are not so good at that. And we have this mood of either you do it or I do it. And if you do it, okay, good luck, you do it. And we don't follow up, you know? And yeah, maybe behind that is this mentality of hoping that maybe he will not be as successful as if I would do it. And that's why I definitely don't want to follow up and help him. Just so I get the satisfaction to say afterwards, just see, I would have done it much better, but you wanted to do it, all right, you know, like that. And again, behind this mentality, of course, is envy, you know, yes, yes. Yeah, it's interesting to see, you know, like in the material world, there the main goal of things is always profit. So we can see, you know, in the secular world, people are often much better in delegating than we are, because they know, not that they are non-envious, no, of course not, but they know this will bring more profit, more success to my company. So therefore, you know, that they are happy to follow up and help the person to be successful, because ultimately it will give them more benefits or sense gratification or whatever. But because we are not profit orientated, that's why, yeah, very often we are not so good at this delegating, you know. Yes. So, but once we realize, oh, there's envy behind it, then maybe we can more consciously do something about it. Because, yes, as I'm always saying, all these things are often very subtle and they're undetected. We don't even realize. And the contaminated intelligence always finds so many justifications why we are acting properly, you know? We can always justify it in so many ways. So that's how, yeah, the false ego contaminates the intelligence, and then the contaminated intelligence always knows how to justify it all, you know? Yes. Yeah, so what else do we do with juniors when we are envious? There's a few more things. But yes, please remember that we said that discussion is not for the sake of detecting the envy in our authorities and superiors, but in our hearts. So, what else is there when we are envious towards juniors? What other elements? Yeah, we refuse our assistance. We kind of already mentioned that in a way. But yeah, it can also manifest in a way that we say, oh, I don't have time for you, you know, I'm so important, you are nothing, I can't work with this person, we are very impatient, you know, he's not on my level to work with, you know. Yes, and that way it manifests. What else? There's a few more things. Anybody has some idea? We are not happy with their attempts. Yes, well, let's put it that way. Sometimes we ignore their skills. Yes, we ignore their skills, even though at the same time we also have to say, like when a new person comes to Krishna consciousness, and the person may have so many material qualifications, but sometimes in that situation it is good to initially ignore the material qualifications, just not to make him proud, you know. So then it is good to first engage him in menial service, so he learns to become a humble servant. Because if we too quickly empower a person, especially in regards to being in charge of others, you know, for that we don't need only material qualification, but also spiritual maturity. And if we too quickly empower people just on the basis of material qualifications, this is very often not a good idea, because it can easily feed a person's pride, and then the person says, oh look, these guys are all useless, I'm a new devotee and I can already do so many things. I have encountered this quite often, how this gets to people's heads, and then they can spoil their whole spiritual development. So initially we may have to, you know, ignore material qualifications just for the sake of giving him a chance to become a humble servant. But then, if we ignore qualifications for so long, then, well, there may be also some envy there, right? Especially if it comes to spiritual qualifications, if we ignore them. So then, obviously, we don't want that person to come up, right? Yes. Or we may give a person too difficult services, which he can't do, just so we get that satisfaction to say, ah, just see, I knew you can't do it, you know? Yeah, all these things can easily sneak in. Yes. And there is one more thing, which we unfortunately commonly do with juniors. When we are envious, what do we do? Huh? We don't give knowledge. Yeah, well, that fits into the whole category of not wanting them to become higher than we are. No, it's something a little different. Ignore them. No. Compare. No, it's all not what I'm looking for, yes.
Distant?
Huh?
Distant in associating but being distant?
Distant could be.
Distant maybe?
Exploiting. I'm looking for one particular thing. We overly harshly and constantly correct them. But again, don't think of your authority now. Yes, if we constantly and very harshly, you know, always pick on somebody, that, oh, you don't do this right, and oh, again you did that wrong, and boo, you know? Yes, this unfortunately comes in. And this can also come towards children, you know? I sometimes see this on my travels, you know, that often mothers, because they're so frustrated and angry and envious, you know, I'm speaking now outside there in the material world, that sometimes they scream and yell at their kids, you know, and a few times I even was so bold to just interfere and say, oh, please don't scream at your child like that. You know, sometimes the child is only 2 or 3 years old, can't even understand anything. But all this anger and envy and frustration, people ventilate on a child, you know, and the poor child is screaming, you know, and doesn't even know what's going on. And yeah, and this is horrible, you know. It leaves very bad impressions on a child's mind. But yeah, even amongst, you know, us devotees, we sometimes also do this. I mean, in regards to correcting, there is an interesting Vaishnava etiquette which says one should only correct others if one is non-envious. But then we said, Prabhupada said, the envious almost everyone. So if almost everyone is envious, then it seems like nobody can correct anybody. So what to do about that? Well, let us first of all understand, and I'm sure we all have had this experience from both sides. When we correct somebody in an envious or maybe false ego mood, or when we are corrected in an envious false ego mood, you have a pretty bad feeling afterwards in the heart, right? Yes. Even when you give the correction, and even if the correction is perfect, but if we give it with envy and false ego motivation, it contaminates everything. Yes. Even if the correction is completely perfect. So this is an interesting thing, you know, because consciousness actually travels on sound vibration. So if we give a correction in an envious and false ego mood, then that envy and false ego mood travels on the sound coming out of our mouth. And that contaminates the hearts of people who hear it. You know? Quite interesting. So that's, for example, also the amazing thing about kirtan. You know, that the love and devotion, hopefully, with which the kirtan leader sings, so that travels on the sound vibration and reaches people's hearts and transforms it, purifies it. But the same Maha Mantra, if it is chanted in a showing off mood, false ego mood, showing off, look how wonderful my voice is, so then that consciousness travels on the sound vibration and it will contaminate everybody's heart. Yeah. So it's good to deeply understand all these things, you know. So yeah, if we are envious and correcting somebody, even if the correction is perfect, it will contaminate the other person's heart, actually, you know. That's why the other person also has this ugly feeling in the heart, you know. Yes, yes. So that's why we should be, as far as possible, non-envious. So one good tip is there, that when we find ourselves in a situation where we see a person doing something wrong, and we feel this urge, oh, I have to tell this person right now, my God, how can they do this? You know, and if we can't even control our tongue, we have to say it right now. Better not to correct in this mood, because it always means false ego is pushing us. Yes. And then the correction will simply contaminate the person's heart. So we should wait until we cool down. Because, yeah, don't you also know this situation? Yes. You know, that, oh, you can't even control yourself so hard, you have to say it right now, you know? And that always means false ego is pushing us to get this gratification of knowing better, you know? Better not to correct a person in that mood. We have to wait until we cool down. Sleeping one night is always a good tip. You know, next morning the world looks already differently. Yes, and or we may have to sleep it over a few nights if one night is not enough. You know. Yes, so we have to cool down and let go of this false ego's demands. And another valuable practical tip I find is that before we give this correction, we have this prayerful mood that we say, oh please Krishna, help me to bring this correction across in a well-wishing mood, being that person's well-wishing friend and servant, wanting the very best for this person. So if we have this prayerful mood before, then Krishna allows us to, at least for these 2 minutes when we give the correction, to be non-envious, even though the envy may set in again a little later. But at least for these split seconds there, we can subdue and control our anger by our envy by Krishna's mercy, if we have this prayerful mood. So I usually like to give these 2 tips there in regards to correcting others. And also let us understand, just the fact that another person is doing something wrong does not give us automatically the right to correct a person. You know? Yes, because especially when a new person comes to Krishna consciousness, then often everybody jumps on them and corrects them all the time, because a new person does everything wrong, of course, you know, and everybody thinks, oh, finally, now I've got somebody I can correct, right? Yes, should not be done. Actually, unless we are in a position of authority, that we are that person's mentor, or that we are a department head, or we have a managerial position, or we are a very senior devotee in the community, you know, we cannot just go up to people and correct them. And also, it is very much a question of our relationship with that person. Right? So if we have a strong relationship with that person, then the correction will be accepted. But if we don't have a relationship with that person, most likely the correction will not be accepted. Because being corrected always touches on our false ego, and very easily we defend, right? Yes, you know, the false ego rebels and we defend, and so as a rule, most of us, we don't just like to be corrected by just anybody and everyone. But if there's a stronger relationship there, and if we know this person is my well-wishing friend, and the person has no other interest except helping me on my spiritual journey, oh yes, then we welcome the correction, right? So it is very much a question of our relationship, you know. Yeah, so we have to be careful that we don't allow our envy to manifest like this, that we always harshly and constantly correct a person and just to put them down. It can be a very convenient way of putting somebody down, right? By always pointing out that he's doing everything wrong. So now, non-envious way of associating with a junior. Yes, junior. We just had envious way towards juniors, so let's go to a non-envious way.
Lots of patience.
Yes, we have patience, we deal affectionately, right? Like Marge's description of Janananda Prabhu this morning in the Bhagavatam class sounded like he was really non-envious, you know? That he could engage everybody in an uplifting and affectionate way. Yes. Yeah, so non-envious means, you know, we have, what's the main thing of non-envy? It was mentioned in the purport. Compassion, exactly. You know, it's also interesting to understand how compassion is connected with non-envy. As long as we are envious, there's no chance of compassion manifesting in our heart, you know? Yes. Which, of course, it doesn't mean we would never go out on book distribution or something, but maybe it may mean that our motivation of book distribution is not so pure, that we are not actually feeling this compassionate mood towards the suffering conditioned souls, but that we just maybe want to get a good result, you know, on book distribution, that our scores are read out in the mornings and everybody hears how many books we distributed. That can also be our motive. And all right, in the beginning, no problem, we all come with so many material motivations, but eventually it should become purified, you know. So unless we learn to, you know, subdue and dissolve this envious tendency in our hearts, we cannot become truly compassionate. Yes. Yeah, so non-envy means we compassionately, affectionately, we reach out to others, we try and uplift them, we want them to be more glorious than ourselves, right? I remember I once heard in a lecture when somebody was talking about this, and he was physically demonstrating this on the Vyasa-san. So if you uplift somebody, then you also go up, right? But if you put somebody down, then you also go down, you know? Very nice little image to keep in one's mind, you know? Yes. Yes, and I mean, of course, Prabhupada was the perfect example, you know, of 1000% non-envious, you know. And therefore he could connect with each and everyone. Doesn't matter who the person was, whether it was a small child or a drunkard in the park bench there, or a hippie or a scientist or a Christian monk or whatever, you know. Prabhupada knew how to connect with every living entity and act for their ultimate benefit of uplifting them, you know. Yes. And Prabhupada sometimes, he was speaking very strongly, you know. He definitely had a thunderbolt there. And sometimes he was calling people fools, rascals, and, you know. But because it was spoken with non-envy, people could sense that. And people, as a rule, they did not get offended, right? Yes, because again, as I was saying, consciousness travels on the sound vibration. So Prabhupada could speak heavy words, but because there was no tinge of envy there, so therefore people did not get upset, you know? Yes. They could feel, he actually wants my very best. He is my best friend and well-wisher. They could feel that. So therefore we have to be careful that we don't imitate Prabhupada, you know, and call people fools and rascals, because when we say these words, there may very well be that mentality of trying to push them down, right? Yeah, the envy. Oh, look at these fools and rascals. Actually, there was a nice story with Prabhupada which took place in Australia. Kurma Prabhu, in his book, The Transcendental Adventure, he describes it, where Prabhupada was coming back to the temple from his morning walk. And he was sitting in the car with some devotees around him. And it was 6 o'clock in the morning, and like in the Western world already 6 o'clock in the morning, people are rushing to work, right? It was in Melbourne actually. So, and then this devotee was saying, oh, look, Srila Prabhupada, all these mudhas going to work. But yeah, he didn't quite say it with full compassion, but yeah, there was this mood of, oh, look at these foods, thank God we are not like them, So, and then Prabhupada, he had a very different mood. He was saying, yes, how can we save them? That was Prabhupada's reaction. And then this devotee could feel, okay, Prabhupada is in a different mood. So he turned to Prabhupada and he actually saw that there was a tear running down Prabhupada's cheeks. How can we save them? And Prabhupada was actually crying. Yeah, so, we have to be careful that we don't imitate and use Prabhupada's words, but we are not so full of compassion yet. There's still a good portion of envy there. So, and then this will travel there on the sound vibration coming out of our mouths. Right? Yeah, so now let us move on. By the way, how long is the seminar slot? I don't even know. When am I meant to finish?
1 o'clock will be clear.
To 1 o'clock? Oh, well, then we have still plenty of time. I hope you can tolerate me so long. So, envious behavior towards equals. How does that manifest? Anybody can remember what Prabhupada said? How do we associate with equals? No, envious. You're one step ahead of us. Exactly. We get proud of our own activities. Yes. We like to chant our own glories. Right? In other words, we have this mood, yes, we are equals, but actually I'm a little better. I'm actually more advanced. Okay, we are equals, but I'm actually more advanced. That's behind it. So therefore we try to impress the person by boasting what we've all been doing. In the name of sharing. I'm simply sharing with my friend, And then, yes, we can just imagine two traveling preachers meet. And then one says, oh yes, I was in London, Rath Yatra, and guess what? I was leading the kirtan. You want to have a look? I've got the YouTube film here. I'll send you the link. And then there was the tent, and I gave the speech. So many hundreds of people were listening. And again, here, you want to have a look here? I've got some photos. And so we go on and on and on what we've all been doing. So, and then at the end we say, and what about you, Prabhu? What have you been doing? And by then the other person, okay, well, wow, you're so great. I'm nothing compared to you, So the other person is completely intimidated and so on. And yeah, then we're successful in establishing our superiority. Right? Yes. So when there is envy amongst equals, what is there immediately?
Rivalry.
Yes, competition, rivalry, competition, exactly, yes. Trying to prove to each other that we are actually better and more advanced and we do more important things and exactly. So now what is the non-envious way of associating with an equal? Friendship and cooperation. So now let's understand, to some extent, friendship and cooperation is also there towards seniors and juniors, actually. But amongst equals is a very special type of friendship, a very special type of intimacy. There's also a kind of competition there, but it is of very different nature than the envious competition. So what's the kind of competition amongst two equals who are non-envious. Yes, you're in the right direction. Yes, see, basically out of Vaishnava humility, they actually consider each other superior. And they push each other forward. Right? I want to hear from you, you give the class. Oh no, you lead the kirtan. I want to join your kirtan, you're more experienced. And so they push each other forward. That's the competition. And interestingly, the same kind of competition takes place in the spiritual world too. So we can read that actually the gopis feel more joy, more bliss by facilitating the other gopis to be near Krishna and give him pleasure. You know, this is for us maybe rather almost difficult to understand, you know, because we naturally think it must be most pleasurable and ecstatic to be there with Krishna ourselves, right? Yes. So we have that mentality of pushing ourselves forward, but in the spiritual world, because there's no tinge of sense gratification there, no tinge of envy, that's why the residents in the spiritual world, they truly experience more bliss, more joy by pushing the other person towards Krishna and making all the arrangements so they can give Krishna the highest pleasure, you know. So in that same kind of mood and that same kind of competition we can also experience amongst equals if they are non-envious. So, and on this non-envious platform, there's also a very intimate sharing going on. That, for example, one person says to the other, "You've been a brahmachari for 30 years, tell me your secrets, how do you do it?" You know? And then the other one says, "And you've been distributing Prabhupada's books for 35 years, so tell me your secret, how do you do it?" So there's this very intimate sharing happening, which can only be taking place on that level of equals. With a senior, with a junior, you cannot have that same intimate sharing, but only amongst equals. But the price to pay is to be non-envious. Yes. Yes. And basically, yes, we treat the other person like more experienced, more advanced. So we want to serve them, we want to inquire from them, and. So now my question to you. Which relationship is most purifying? Seniors equals juniors? Yes. Equals. Even though we can say in the very beginning of our devotional life, you know, senior association is also very uplifting and purifying. But then as we become so-called senior, then the equal association becomes more purifying. So to share our influence with somebody equally influential, this is a challenge, you know? Because there's always this fear there, or maybe the other person will be more influential, more popular, maybe they like him more than me, you know. So to share our power of influence with a similarly influential person, this is not easy. This requires non-envy, you know. Yes. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure some of us here, we have had that practical experience doing something with an equally qualified person. let's imagine we are cooking lunch for Guru Maharaj with an equally expert cook. This can be an intense experience, right? If it is one expert and a helper, no problem. But two equally expert cooks, immediately there's this competition coming in. Who knows better what Guru Maharaj likes, right? Oh, I've seen it, I've witnessed it, or, people arguing, no, Guru Maharaj cannot eat this, no, don't you know, this latest diet is like this, and no, he can't have that, he doesn't like it, but no, he told me, and I've even come across how people steal each other's pots, steal each other's boga, or the pinnacle, the topmost way of being envious is when somebody cooks something and then we come and say, no need to serve this to Guru Maharaj. I know he will not like it. It's not according to his diet. Take it away. No need to even show him. Yeah, so these things are going on, Even if he doesn't like it or can't have it, no harm to show it to him, to offer it. He may inquire, what is it? Maybe he will try a little spoon, So, but not wanting to even serve it. This, and again, we can all justify it with our contaminated intelligence. Oh, I know, I'm only concerned about his health, and this will just not be good for him. Like that. Yes. Yes, or two equally qualified pujaris dressing up the deities for Janmashtami. Can be an intense experience, Who's got the better idea, or even also in the flower department making garlands and distributing the flowers and giving people only here 10 flowers, so make a big garland out of that, not giving people nice flowers so they can make something beautiful, and all these things unfortunately happen. And I guess this exactly is the purifying power of serving in association, There's so much purification taking place, especially when the service mood is more intense, when the flame of service is switched higher. So many things come to the surface, right? Yes. So that's why the serving in association of devotees under the guidance of seniors is so important. If we stay aloof and do our own thing and just come every now and again to a festival, we are missing out. We just don't get that purification. Like sometimes I come across these things that devotees say, at the temple there's always so many things and so many difficulties. I want to stay aloof. Well, but why are these difficulties there? Because we are not pure servants. So then, the whole ego clashes are taking place, or the things are coming to the surface. So it's good to put ourselves in that fire of purification and learn how to deal with it, and learn to become humble and tolerant, and things become obvious, and we somehow have to learn to deal with them, uproot them, kick them out of our life, and A good story in the Bhagavatam showing the difficulty of equal association is a story with Prithu Maharaj and Indra, right? Indra had done 100 horse sacrifices, Prithu Maharaj only 99. So as long as it was like this, everything was peaceful. But then as soon as Prithu Maharaj wanted to do the 100th horse sacrifice, then boo, Indra felt threatened. And what did he do? He stole the horse. Just like we steal the boga or the pots so that the yajna can't take place. So they were doing the same thing, stealing the horse back and forwards, you know. So it just shows that even on that level, there is this difficulty of eco-association, you know. And yeah, I mean, we can say that most conflicts in our communities or in the world in general actually have their roots in this difficulty of eco-association, you know. So I'm traveling quite a lot in all different parts of the world. In many communities, there's all these power battles, ego battles, power games going on, you know, amongst seniors, you know, especially also often amongst men, because male false ego is stronger, just to make sure he plays the role of taking charge. That's why Krishna gave the male body a stronger false ego. Otherwise he probably would not want to take charge, but somebody has to take charge, you know. So, and then often you have all these ego clashes. Even in the animal kingdom, Vrindavan, monkey fights, dog fights, you know. It's mainly amongst the male dogs, male monkeys over territory and you know. Yes. I have a few more things to mention, but maybe let us see what questions we have, since it is a very practical question. We'll start here.
So I have a question about Vaishnava Paradka. How do you, like, I find it really I'm trying to control myself and find it really difficult to distinguish where you are just making fun and laugh. Where you are just making fun and laugh about what someone did. And it's not in an angry way, it's like in a funny way. You just want to laugh about it. And when it's like really big aparat and it's angry and envy and yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, making fun out of another person is always in a funny, laughing way, right? How can we make fun out of somebody in an angry way? You know? So it's always in a laughing, joking way. But then when we really reflect and look in our heart, if we are honest, we have to discover that there is some envy. We want to put that person down. We want to minimize that person. And we want to establish ourselves in a superior position, you know? It's there. So, yeah, we have to be pretty careful, you know? I mean, especially also if it is in the person's presence, you know? I mean, even correcting others should not be made in the presence of others, but it should ideally be a one-to-one thing, you know? And just to laugh and joke on another person's expense, yeah, I mean, if we want to stay on the safe side, better not to do it. I'm just thinking of one good thing. You can make a joke about yourself and have a good laugh about yourself. There we can't go wrong, you know? But about others, we have to be careful, you know? We have to be careful. Better to glorify others, you know? And point out how nicely they're serving, what nice qualities they have, and rather than making some jokes about their shortcomings or something, you know. Yes. What else? Yes.
I have one question regarding the how can we define when it's not so obvious who is senior and who is younger?
Yeah, that's a very common question, which almost always comes up. Well, so how to define who is senior equal junior? So the ultimate criteria is one's spiritual advancement. But since we can't so easily assess that, we have to start somewhere. And that's why we start with the more external and, if you want, material considerations. Because we have to start somewhere. So that's why we usually look at the years, how long we have been a devotee, how long when did we get initiated, first initiation, second initiation. Even though these criteria are very external, it actually doesn't mean that much. How many years a person has been initiated. It really depends how a person is practicing, right? But we have to start somewhere. Then also a managerial position is always considered superior, even though, let's say a person may be a Prabhupada disciple in the congregation, but the temple president is junior. So, but still, even the Prabhupada disciple will respect the temple president as superior, because on the strength of the position, the managerial position. But then also, of course, the temple president, out of Vaishnava humility, he will say, no, actually this person is senior. Then another consideration is the ashram. The renounced ashram is always superior. So sannyasa ashram is always superior, even if the sannyasi is not a Prabhupada disciple and the other devotees are Prabhupada disciples. Still, just on the strength of sannyas, he is considered superior. And even one's age, just being 30 years older or something, 30 years of more life experience, is also considered superior. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives another funny criteria. He says, the size of our body. So, he truly says that. But we usually don't hear this so often. But yeah, so if somebody has a big, strong body, so you better watch out. You better take the humble position. But the ultimate criteria is our spiritual advancement. And I mean, in this regard, we also have the nice story in the Bhagavatam with Jada Bharat and Rahugana, King Rahugana, So Jada Bharat was carrying King Rahugana in the palanquin, and he was giving him some uncomfortable ride there. So, and then King Rahugana chastised him, and then Jada Bharat gave this whole eloquent speech. Yes, today you are the king, I'm the carrier, tomorrow can be the other way around, you can be the carrier and I'm the king, and. So, and King Rahugana, what did he do? He jumped off the palanquin and paid obeisances, because he realized, oh, my palanquin carrier, he's actually a great soul. He is a self-realized soul. So he took the humble position. So if he had been caught on the false ego platform there, he could have said, oh, how dare you speak like that? I'm going to lock you up, and. So that's a nice example how a Vaishnava, out of humility, will recognize who is more self-realized, Even though according to the external criteria, we may be superior, but if there's somebody who is actually more self-realized, who has a stronger power of uplifting others, then he will naturally take the humble position and consider himself as subordinate, like that.
And one more question. So it's up to us. We have to do this work, internal work, and to define this is now senior in front of me, or.
Well, I mean, as I said, we take the external criterias, There's no need to make some big internal work in this regard. So we take the external criterias, but then if somebody obviously, has more spiritual strength and realization, then if we have a little bit of Vaishnava humility, we will take the humble position. And I mean, Gaur Govinda Maharaj recommends, we should see everybody as Vaishnavas except me. I'm just aspiring to become one, right? So then we are on the safe side. But then again, I mean, for the sake of preaching and giving junior devotees the opportunity to serve seniors, we may also have to accept the senior position, just for it to all go on according to Vaishnava etiquette. Like sometimes we have this, that when we take Janamrita, nobody wants to be the first one. No, you Prabhu, you go first. I mean, this can also be a whole false ego thing, So I mean, false ego, very tricky, So, we have to accept in humility the position of being senior in some circumstances, just for the sake of the service going on according to the etiquette, Yes. And if we actually do it in the mood of service, then there is no problem to be the first one who takes the Janamrita, But if we have the mood of showing off, oh look, I'm the first one, well then maybe we better shouldn't, like that. Okay, any other question? Yes.
I think if the whole society accepts the rules you just stated, then it will work perfectly, the whole society. But I'm thinking like in material life, especially maybe in business life, when you approach a person who does not follow those rules and maybe has, so to say, demoniac qualities and just tries to exploit you and to put you down, to uplift themselves, and then you apply your rules and you are nice, you try to uplift them, you share all your knowledge with them and do all the good to them. And isn't it also a bit dangerous? So that person might just take all of you and give nothing back and even use it against you and see it as a weakness.
Yeah, it's true. So we have to see according to the individual situation. But one thing is there. I remember reading in the Tagesschau website, there was once an article how important it is for leaders to have humility. And I was thinking, just say, even the non-devotees understand, that humility is a very important quality for a leader. I was really impressed. I thought, wow, this is amazing. Because, ultimately, who wants to work under a person who is puffed up and arrogant, So if a person actually has some humility, even in the material world, we often get further, we often get further. So, I mean, it has to be looked at in the individual situation. But in this regard, I do want to share one amazing story, a Sankirtan story, which took place in Australia. And in order to understand it, I have to elaborate a little bit the background. Because in the early days in Australia, we could not distribute books in the street because we could not accept money, even donations. and the devotees were locked up, put in prison, and. So then the leaders came up with this idea to distribute, to sell things during the week, Monday to Friday, stickers and so many things. And then Saturday we all went out and gave the books out for free. So I joined in Australia in that time, so I remember this. So Saturday mornings we were all going in the shopping centers and giving these soft cover books for free, And yeah, some of course ended in the rubbish bin. Afterwards we went around, picked them out, cleaned them up and distributed them next Saturday. So and there was this amazing story where, one man was coming and pretending he wanted to accept a book, and then he was ripping up the book in pieces and trampling on it. So, and the same devotees were every Saturday in the same shopping mall, and the same man came every time and played this game, that he pretended he wanted to get a book, and the devotees gave him the book, and he ripped it up. And this was going on for quite a few times. So, and then one day, this man actually took a book because he was so impressed by the humility and tolerance of the devotees that he was saying to himself, these guys are not ordinary people. They must be somehow special, because they were the same devotees. They knew this man. And nevertheless, they every time gave him a book. And the same story repeated. So, and then he took a book home. And he was thinking, let me have a look what's in this book. And guess what? He became a devotee. He became a book distributor. So it just shows, how purity, humility, tolerance is purifying. It is purifying, Yes. Because, I've told this story a few times, and people have told to me, oh, I would have never given the same guy the book again. That would be the ordinary reaction. Oh no, this guy, don't give him a book, he will rip it up. But they gave him a book every time, again and again. And that interaction purified him to such extent that he became curious. Okay, let me see what's in this book. Prabhupada was always saying, just touching it gives purification, and that contact with the devotees. Yes. We have a little bit of time left, and I do want to share 5 very practical steps how we can uproot this Hiranyakashipu mentality. They're very practical. I apply them myself, and they work. They're very simple, actually. Of course, in one sense, you better get your phone out to take notes. In one sense, of course, the practice of Krishna consciousness purifies us, right? So as we said, envy is connected with the enjoying spirit. So as we develop a higher taste, we can give up the lower taste for sense gratification, and proportionally also our envy gets less. And of course, chanting the holy name is very powerful. And yet, unless we do some more internal work, very easily our chanting of the holy name can be like an elephant taking bath. Because elephant taking bath, what is he doing? Immediately after his bath, takes the trunk, throws all the dust back on his back. So this very easily happens to us, that we make all efforts to chant very nicely, but then we slip back into our envious patterns of behaviors, our false ego patterns of behaviors. And we are so trapped in these patterns of behaviors. And that's like the dirt which we throw back on our back. So that's why actually there is these two tracks that we have to chant the holy name and make endeavors to get on deeper levels of chanting. But also we have to transform these false ego patterns of behaviors. And that requires some internal work. And I want to share these 5 steps. So step number 1 is always hearing about the topic. That's why I like to discuss them. Just so we become conscious, we hear about it, we realize, oh my God. You know, I had people saying to me after the session, oh, this was the best heart surgery I ever had. And I realized, God, I have them all these envious behaviors towards seniors equals juniors. Oh, I didn't even realize before, you know. So yeah, hearing about it is always step number 1. So if we hear about it, hopefully then we come to step number 2, that we, or let me ask you, what is step number 2 after hearing about it? Yeah, before that. No. No. Desiring to do something about it. Right? Once we realize, God, I've got this all, I have to do something about it. I have to work on it and kick this out. Otherwise, how will I ever be able to enter Goloka Vrindavan? You know, as we said, that's the kingdom of no envy, you know. Yeah, so we desire to really do something about it. Ultimately, it is all a question of desire. Right? So step number 2, we desire. So then comes step number 3. We are introspective and honest, reflecting. Why am I saying this? Why am I doing this? What just took place in this exchange? Why do I have some funny feeling now after this exchange? How did I contribute to this unpleasant situation? So without this reflection and introspection, we actually cannot make advancement. We can always justify things. We can always sweep them under the carpet and leave it all as it is, you know? So we have to constantly reflect and introspect. And it has to become like our second nature. That's actually what it means to be conscious, you know? That we reflect and we are aware, you know, what is my motive and what effect do my words have on other people, my activities, you know, that we are reflecting and introspecting. And at that point of introspection and reflection, that's where we do need some help. We do need a mentor. Because very easily, false ego blocks our ears, blocks our intelligence. We can't hear, we can't understand. We need this well-wishing friend on our side who has no other interest except our spiritual journey and who wants to, you know, be our best friend and well-wisher. And he or she will be able to, you know, tap us on the shoulder and say, hey, just cool down, this was a bit over the top, and we may not even notice, you know, because as long as we have material desires and attachments, we can't objectively assess ourselves. That's the whole point. We can't see where we stand. We may think we're doing really well, but others may have a different opinion. And if we don't have such a person in our life, very easily we stay in our comfort zone also. And we become stagnant. And we may be coming for 30 years to the Sunday feast every week, but nothing is transforming in our heart. Yeah, so this introspection and reflection, so important. So then, step number 4, we catch ourselves doing the wrong thing. So even though it's the wrong thing, but still it is progress, because at least we catch ourselves doing the wrong thing. That we realize, oh, here we go again. Again, I couldn't control my tongue. I had to say this nasty comment just to put that person down. And, you know, so that's already progress, because for so long before we were doing the wrong thing, but we never even noticed. But now at least we notice that we catch ourselves doing the wrong thing. So now, my question to you, what's the next step? After catching ourselves doing the wrong thing.
Pray to Krishna.
I could hear the right answer from the back there.
Pray to Krishna.
Yes! Cry out to Krishna, to Lord Nrsimhadev. Tomorrow is Narasimha Caturdasi. Perfect opportunity to cry out, please, Lord Nrsimhadev, enter my heart with your sharp long nails and perform the heart surgery. Pull out this envy, this false ego out of my heart. Because envy, false ego, they're so subtle. We have carried them with us for so many lifetimes. We, out of our own strength, we actually can't free ourselves. So at that point, often people suggest, don't do it again. We just make a resolution not to do it again. But, well, it would be good if it was so easy, you know. We can make so many resolutions, but then 2 hours later we will do it again, you know. Not so easy to actually stop. It requires a whole transformation. Yeah, so we cry out to Krishna. And see, our problem is that we are not so serious in inviting Krishna to uproot envy, false ego, because we still keep ourselves in this illusion that they will also bear some juicy and tasty fruits, that they will give some happiness, very short-lived, usually ending in distress. But yeah, that's why we usually are not so serious, you know. We say, all right, Krishna, you can uproot this anata, but not that one. I'll hang on to that one a little longer, you know. Yes, that's actually the main problem, you know. So now, if we do this last 3 steps again and again, that we are introspective and honest, we catch ourselves doing the wrong thing, we cry out to Krishna, we are introspective and honest, we catch ourselves doing the wrong thing, we cry out to Krishna, then sooner or later we come to the 6th step. And that is that we catch ourselves doing the right thing. Yes. Sooner or later we will face some little you know, everyday situation in our life where we realize, oh, 2 weeks before I would have reacted differently. But now I can just let it go by. I don't get provoked and agitated. I don't have to have the last word or make the nasty comment or something. And then we realize, actually, this works, you know. But it requires hard work, you know. It requires hard work of always introspecting, catching ourselves, doing the wrong thing. And I tell you frankly, if you start this, you will see that almost every day Krishna gives us so many opportunities to let go of our false ego, our envy, and so often we do just the opposite of what we should be doing, you know. It's every day, so many situations, especially also in family life, married life, so purifying, My God, you know? Yes, it really forces us to become humble, tolerant, servant. And if we are not willing to do this internal work, usually we can't keep our marriages together. So our high divorce rate directly reflects, you know, that people rather split and run off than doing this internal work. Yes, yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of, you know, things every day that Krishna gives us this situation and to purify us, but usually we blow it. We do the opposite of what we should be doing, you know. So yeah, it takes quite a bit of work to transform these unwanted patterns of behaviors. It will not happen by itself, you know. That's why Mahaprabhu says, Trinada Pisunichina. So only then we can actually receive the benefit which the holy name carries. If we are more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, you know, only then. So as long as we are trapped in these false ego, envious patterns of behaviors, we tread on the spot. We can't really move forward, you know. Yeah, so, and also interesting to understand, in the neophyte stage, we think we're doing everything fine, you know. It requires a little bit of initial purification to realize it all, to be able to see the subtle things, you know. So basically we can say the more purified we become, the more we realize, oh my God, I've got a long way to go, you know. Yes. Okay. Any other last question? Yes, last question.
I would like to ask about judging people immediately. Like, for example, I don't have a time to introspect and think and stop myself because it comes in a second. It's so unconscious. Judgment. You mean how to stop yourself from this habit?
Well, you can use the same 5 steps. When you catch yourself doing it, you cry out to Krishna. I mean, with passing judgments on others, we have to be so careful, you know. Definitely, Vaishnava etiquette tells us that we should never pass judgments on superiors, because we, from our more neophyte position, we can't understand, you know. Even also, when there is some dispute, some disagreement on higher levels, it's not our position to get involved, to take sides, to discuss, to pass judgments. Guaranteed we will commit offense, because we don't know what's going on there, you know? And it's not our business, it's not our circle of influence. So especially at the moment, so many things are going on there in ISKCON, and better to keep away from it, you know. If we see some alarming behavior in seniors, then it is our duty to simply report it to their authority. And then we've done our bit. And then it is up to them to deal with it. But if we hear, you know, I have a whole presentation also on Prajalpa. I gave that in Mayapur this year at the ILS, the ISKCON Leadership Sangha. Prabhupada made this statement, Prajalpa, it will destroy this movement. Yes. And yeah, interesting to discover how practically most forms of Prajalpa are coming about through envy. You know? Yes. Well, it all is connected, you know. So in any case, passing judgments on seniors is definitely a no-no. Definitely. And as we said, even if there's some wrong in a Vaishnava, just talking about it, that in itself shows envy. It's blaspheming devotees, even if it's true. You know? And you see our saintly personalities, our sadhus, they never talk bad about people, about devotees. And it's not that they don't see all these things, but they just don't talk about it. Because if we talk about negative things, it only magnifies the negativity. Right? It's not uplifting to anybody. Not to the person who has the shortcomings, not to ourselves, not to others who hear it. It's not uplifting to anybody. So therefore, no need, you know. And even if it is in regards to equals or juniors, this passing judgments, there also we have to be very careful that we only pass a judgment after hearing all the different people involved, all sides. We have to hear objectively, openly, and only then we can pass a judgment, right? I mean, in the secular world, at every court case, hearing all the witnesses takes the longest, but every witness is heard. And it takes a lot of time and energy. And only then the judgment is passed. But so often we don't do this. We just hear something, some rumors, and then immediately we pass a judgment. And this is terrible, terrible. You know, even in marriage problems, let's say one Mataji comes to us and tells us about their problems in married life. Well, if we want to get a clear picture of the situation, we also have to hear his side. He may say something which, you know, puts things more into perspective. Obviously, he's got a whole different picture of the situation. We have to hear all sides, even though it may take a lot of time and energy. But, well, that's what it takes, you know. But so often we just pass judgments immediately, just based on rumors and talks and this and that, without really taking the time to more deeply get into it, you know. Yeah, so it's a big thing. Okay, so my time is up here. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I do want to bring your attention to these books, because they are related to the topic, as you can see, the false ego, our constant companion and troublemaker. It's all about this Hiranyakashipu mentality. There's also a whole chapter on chanting the holy name in it, how we are meant to chant, that it helps us to uproot this Hiranyakashipu in our hearts. Also, this book, Sheltering Relationships, this is all about the importance of having a mentor. And actually, in that book is the whole chapter on envy in it. It's one chapter of that book. And there's also a chapter on culture of correcting others, culture of respect. So many important and practical things that my humble preaching efforts are targeted towards the practical application of our philosophy. That we don't only repeat it and learn it by heart, but that we actually put it into practice, that we live it. And we are not quite there yet. We still got quite a bit of way to go there, you know. Yes, and then also entering the Grihastha ashram, how to do it, how not to do it. I think we need a bit of help in that too. And with our high divorce rate, I'm convinced this one reason is because we start the whole thing on the wrong footing, you know, with the wrong attitude, expectation, and the wrong way, and so on and so on. Yeah, so if you are interested in checking out the books, 2 of them are also in Russian there, right, especially for all the Ukrainian devotees. I actually got them specially sent from Ukraine, because they're printed in Ukraine. And in an adventurous way, I managed to get them here, even though there's the war happening. So, and I especially got them so I can serve the Russian-speaking devotees with them. Okay, so if you're interested, you can come up here, or I will also be out there on the book table. And I will also be available on the book table for questions, for, if anybody wants to personally connect or something. This is always my main joy and satisfaction on festivals, just to try and reach out to devotees and make myself available to them. This gives me more satisfaction than just being in the kirtan or something. So you're welcome to meet me out there. Okay, thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki, Gaura Premanandi, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna? Okay. Hare Krishna, if I just can make a quick announcement. So now at 1 o'clock we will have obviously the Rajaboga Arati. It would be nice if we accompany it with some kirtan. And then outside we're having the registration and further allocating the sevas. So just to make it clear, we are still very much in need for help